The stars looked different now from the bridge of the Vorthak survey ship. Captain Zexai had been patrolling these outer rim sectors for 15 years and nothing ever changed. The same empty space, the same dead worlds, the same boring reports to send back to command. Today felt different, though, and he couldn't explain why. His second officer, a young Vorthak named Gelmos, looked up from his scanner station with confusion written across his reptilian features. "Captain, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the Sol system." Zexai's blood went cold. Every spacefarer in the galaxy knew about Sol. It was the system where the humans used to live, back before they vanished from galactic civilization over 400 years ago. Most species had forgotten about them entirely. The humans had been weak, primitive, always begging for scraps of technology and trade agreements. Then one day they just stopped responding to all communications and withdrew completely from galactic affairs. "Are you certain about those readings, Gelmos?" The younger officer checked his instruments twice before nodding. "The energy signatures are massive, Captain. Far beyond anything in our databases. These readings suggest technology that shouldn't exist." Zexai stared at the tactical display showing the Sol system. It was supposed to be empty except for that small blue world where the humans had lived. According to all galactic records, they had probably destroyed themselves in some primitive war, or simply died out from their own incompetence. That's what happened to weak species who couldn't adapt to the realities of galactic civilization. 4 light-years away, Admiral John Carter stood on the observation deck of humanity's newest flagship, the EFS Endeavour. The massive vessel stretched for miles in every direction, its hull made from materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Through the transparent walls, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, but it was not the Earth that the galaxy remembered. Orbital cities ringed the planet in perfect geometric patterns. Space elevators reached down to the surface like silver threads. Construction platforms built new ships that defied every known principle of spacecraft design. This was not the primitive world that had once struggled to launch simple chemical rockets into orbit. Carter's aide, Lieutenant Ben Davis, approached with a data tablet. "Admiral, Dr. Morgan has completed her final preparations. The xenobiology team confirms that our intelligence on all known galactic species is current and accurate." Admiral nodded slowly. Dr. Lisa Morgan had spent decades studying every alien race in the galaxy through methods that the other species couldn't possibly imagine. Humanity had not been idle during their centuries of silence. While the galaxy continued its endless cycle of petty wars and political games, Earth had undergone the greatest transformation in its history. "What's the status of our contact protocols?" Carter asked. "Ready for implementation, sir. The first phase teams are standing by. Commander Phillips has the Guardian positioned at the system's edge, waiting for any incoming vessels." Carter looked out at the stars and remembered the old Earth, the one that had sent desperate ambassadors to beg for membership in the Galactic Federation. Those humans had been rejected, dismissed as too primitive and backward to contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization. The alien species had treated them like children playing with dangerous toys. That was before the visitors came. The beings from beyond the galaxy who found Earth during humanity's darkest hour of isolation, ancient entities whose civilization had transcended physical existence eons ago. Before departing for dimensions beyond mortal understanding, they had given humanity a gift that would change everything. Dr. Lisa Morgan reviewed the final data streams in her laboratory deep beneath the lunar surface. 3 centuries of genetic enhancement, consciousness expansion, and technological integration had produced results that even she sometimes found difficult to believe. The humans preparing to reveal themselves to the galaxy were no longer the same species that had been dismissed so casually. 400 years ago, every human now possessed cognitive capabilities that allowed them to process information at rates that would seem impossible to their ancestors. Their enhanced biology could adapt to any environment, resist any disease, and repair damage that would be fatal to normal humans. Most importantly, they had achieved true integration with artificial intelligence systems, creating a hybrid consciousness that combined human creativity with machine precision. The quantum consciousness transfer technology meant that death itself had become merely an inconvenience. Human minds could be backed up, transferred, and restored in new bodies as needed. They had achieved practical immortality, but that was just the beginning of their transformation. Morgan's team had spent decades studying the weaknesses and limitations of every alien species in the galaxy. The Vorthak relied too heavily on their physical strength and had never developed sophisticated defensive systems. The Crystalline Collective possessed advanced technology, but lacked the flexibility to adapt quickly to new situations. The Draconian hegemony had powerful weapons, but their rigid military hierarchy made them predictable and slow to respond to unexpected tactics. Each species had evolved along predictable paths, developing their civilizations within the constraints of their biology and psychology. Humanity had broken free from those constraints entirely. They had become something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Jake Phillips stood on the bridge of the EFS Guardian, monitoring the approach of the Vorthak survey vessel. His enhanced senses could detect the alien ship's energy patterns, analyze its weapon systems, and predict its crew's likely responses to any given situation. The Guardian itself was a marvel that would be incomprehensible to the approaching aliens. The ship's hull could reshape itself for optimal performance in any situation. Its weapons didn't fire projectiles or energy beams, but manipulated the fundamental forces of physics themselves. Most importantly, it could fold spacetime to appear in multiple locations simultaneously, making traditional combat tactics completely obsolete. Phillips opened a communication channel as the Vorthak ship entered detection range. He spoke in perfect Vorthak, his enhanced vocal cords producing the complex tones and harmonics of their language with ease. Unknown vessel, you are approaching restricted space. Please state your intentions. On the bridge of the Vorthak ship, Zexai nearly fell from his command chair. The voice was speaking perfect Vorthak, but there was something in the tone that made his scales crawl. It was the voice of someone who held absolute confidence, someone who spoke not as a supplicant hoping for recognition, but as an equal addressing a trespasser. This is Captain Zexai of the Vorthak survey vessel Dark Wing. We detected unusual energy readings from this system and came to investigate. Who are you? Phillips smiled, though the alien captain couldn't see his expression. We are the inhabitants of this system. We believe your people once knew us as humans. The silence that followed was deafening. Zexai stared at his communications officer, who confirmed that the transmission was definitely coming from somewhere within the Sol system. But that was impossible. The humans were gone, vanished centuries ago, forgotten by everyone except historians and archaeologists. That's impossible, Zexai finally managed. The humans disappeared 400 years ago. They were primitive, weak. They couldn't even maintain basic interstellar communications. We evolved, Phillips replied simply. Would you like to see what we've become? Captain Zexai gripped his command chair as his ship's sensors went completely insane. The energy readings from the Sol system spiked beyond anything his instruments could measure. Warning lights flashed across every station on the bridge as his crew struggled to understand what they were seeing. Captain, 3 vessels just appeared on our scanners, Gelmos reported, his voice shaking. They weren't there a moment ago. They just materialized out of nowhere. Through the main viewing screen, Zexai watched 3 ships approach his vessel. They moved unlike anything he had ever seen before. The hulls seemed to flow and shift like living creatures, their surfaces rippling with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. They didn't fly through space so much as dance through it, moving in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. Commander Jake Phillips watched the Vorthak ship from the bridge of the Guardian. His enhanced vision could see the fear radiating from the alien crew members through their ship's hull. The other 2 human vessels, the Swift and the Dawn, had taken flanking positions around the survey ship. Not threatening positions, but ones that made it clear the aliens were completely surrounded. Analysis complete, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Amy Clark. Standard Vorthak military survey vessel. Plasma cannons, particle shields, conventional faster-than-light drive. Technology level approximately 400 years behind our current capabilities. Phillips nodded. The Vorthak had always been a militaristic species, but they had never progressed beyond the basic technologies that dominated galactic civilization. They still relied on weapons that fired energy or matter at their targets. They still used shields that tried to block incoming attacks. They still moved through space using drives that pushed against the fabric of reality, instead of manipulating it directly. Open communications again, Phillips ordered. On the Vorthak bridge, Zexai jumped when the human voice returned. Captain, we're going to demonstrate some of our capabilities. Please do not attempt to flee or attack. We have no intention of harming you, but we want you to understand what you're dealing with. Wait, Zexai said desperately. What do you mean, demonstrate? What are you going to do? Philip smiled. We're going to show you how we move. The 3 human ships suddenly vanished from the Vorthak sensors. Gelmos frantically worked his controls, trying to relocate them, but they were simply gone. Then they reappeared, but now they were in completely different positions. The Guardian sat directly above the Vorthak ship. The Swift had moved to the port side. The Dawn was now behind them. How did they do that? Gelmos whispered. Before Zexai could answer, the ships vanished again. This time they reappeared in a perfect triangle formation around the survey vessel. Then they disappeared and reappeared again, this time in a straight line. Each movement was instantaneous, with no sign of the ships actually traveling through the space between positions. Impossible, Zexai breathed. Nothing can move that fast. Even our best ships need several seconds to engage their jump drives. Philip's voice came through the communication system again, but now it sounded like he was speaking from multiple locations at once. We're not using jump drives, Captain. We're folding space itself. Distance becomes meaningless when you can manipulate the fundamental structure of reality. The demonstration continued. The human ships began moving in patterns that should have been impossible. They appeared to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, their hulls becoming translucent as they phased in and out of normal space. Sometimes Zexai could see the same ship in 3 different positions at once, as if reality itself had become confused about where the vessel actually was. Dr. Lisa Morgan monitored the demonstration from her laboratory on Earth. The quantum consciousness network allowed her to share the perceptions of every human involved in the encounter. She could see through Phillips's eyes, feel his thoughts, and understand his tactical analysis in real time. This was another advancement that the galaxy couldn't comprehend. Humans no longer functioned as isolated individuals. They were becoming a collective intelligence that could coordinate its actions across vast distances. How are the aliens responding? Asked her assistant, Dr. Kevin Brown. Exactly as predicted, Morgan replied. Fear, confusion, and complete inability to understand what they're witnessing. The Vorthak mind simply cannot process technology that operates outside their conceptual framework. The demonstration reached its climax when the Guardian suddenly appeared directly inside the Vorthak ship's shield perimeter, not breaking through the shields or overpowering them, but simply materializing inside the protected space as if the shields didn't exist at all. Gelmos fell backward from his station. Captain, they're inside our shields! How is that possible? Zexai stared at the human ship floating just a few hundred meters away. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The hull seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that pulsed with internal light. Geometric patterns flowed across its surface like rivers of pure energy. It was clearly a warship, but unlike any weapon platform he had ever seen. Your shields operate on the principle of energy deflection, Phillips explained, his voice now coming from speakers throughout the Vorthak ship. They're designed to block matter and energy from passing through a barrier. But we're not passing through your shields. We're simply choosing not to exist in the same dimensional space that your shields occupy. Lieutenant Amy Clark ran her scans of the alien vessel while maintaining her position inside their defensive perimeter. The Vorthak technology was primitive but functional. Their weapons could potentially damage unshielded human vessels, though they would never be fast enough to target ships that could move through folded space. Their shields might protect them from conventional attacks, but they were useless against weapons that could strike from alternate dimensions. Shall I demonstrate our defensive capabilities? Clark asked Phillips through their neural link. Phillips considered for a moment. The aliens needed to understand that humanity had not just advanced in mobility and weapons, but in every aspect of technology. Proceed with the demonstration. The Guardian suddenly began to change shape. Its hull flowed like liquid, extending new sections and retracting others. Within seconds, the sleek warship had transformed into something that looked more like a research vessel. Then it changed again, becoming a cargo hauler, then a medical ship, then back to its original configuration. Adaptive matter, Phillips explained to the stunned alien crew. Our ships can reconfigure themselves for any mission requirement. Hull composition, internal layout, weapon systems, everything can be altered in real time. Zexai found his voice again. What do you want from us? Why are you showing us this? Phillips's tone became more serious. Because the galaxy is about to change, Captain. Humanity is ending its isolation. We're returning to galactic civilization, but not as the weak species that once begged for acceptance. We're returning as what we've become. The Guardian moved away from the Vorthak ship, passing through their shields as easily as it had entered. The other two human vessels took formation beside it, their hulls still rippling with that strange liquid motion. You're going to return to your people, Phillips continued. You're going to tell them what you've seen here, and you're going to warn them that the old order is ending. Humanity has evolved beyond the limitations that once defined us. We're no longer bound by the rules that govern the rest of galactic civilization. The three human ships began to fade from normal space, becoming translucent and ghostly. Tell your leaders that we'll be making contact with the Galactic Federation soon. Tell them that this time, we won't be asking for permission to join their club. We'll be offering them the chance to join ours. The ships vanished completely, leaving the Vorthak survey vessel alone in empty space. Zexai stared at his sensor displays, which showed no trace that the human vessels had ever been there. If not for the recorded communications, he might have thought the entire encounter was a hallucination. Set course for home, he ordered quietly. Maximum speed. As the Dark Wing jumped away from the Sol system, Zexai knew that everything was about to change. The humans were back, and they were no longer the species that anyone remembered. The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened on Kepler Prime, exactly 7 days after Captain Zexai's report reached Vorthak Command. The massive chamber that normally hosted routine trade, disputes, and territorial negotiations now buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 major species gathered to discuss what many were calling the greatest threat to galactic stability in centuries. Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Collective stood at her designated podium, her translucent body shimmering with nervous energy. The report from the Vorthak survey mission had been analyzed by every major intelligence agency in the galaxy, and the conclusions were uniformly disturbing. Esteemed colleagues, Veltar began, her voice ringing through the chamber's translation systems. We face an unprecedented situation. The beings claiming to be human have demonstrated technological capabilities that exceed our most advanced theoretical models. If these reports are accurate, they possess the ability to manipulate space-time itself. Counselor Thexerin of the Aquatic Federation rippled his gill slits in skepticism. Perhaps the Vorthak crew experienced some form of mass hallucination. The humans were primitive when they disappeared. Species do not advance from barely achieving faster than light, travel to manipulating fundamental forces in just 4 centuries. The sensor recordings are genuine, interrupted General Cross of the Draconian hegemony, his massive reptilian form dominating his section of the chamber. Our technical analysis confirms that the energy signatures detected by the Vorthak vessel are real. Whatever these humans have become, they represent a clear threat to the established order. Fleet Admiral Steve Harrison materialized in the center of the chamber without warning. No ship had been detected entering the system. No transportation beam had been used. One moment the space was empty. The next a human stood there as if he had simply decided to exist in that location. The chamber fell silent. Harrison appeared to be a normal human male in his 40s, wearing a simple blue uniform with minimal decorations. He was unremarkable in every way except for his eyes, which seemed to hold depths that suggested vast intelligence and experience. Honorable representatives, Harrison said, his voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber without any amplification system. I am Fleet Admiral Steve Harrison, speaking for the people of Earth. We appreciate your concern about our return to galactic affairs. Veltar recovered from her shock first. How did you get here? Our security systems detected no incoming vessels. Harrison smiled politely. We have different ways of traveling now. Distance is no longer a meaningful constraint for us. General Cross leaned forward menacingly. You dare enter this chamber without permission? Guards, arrest this intruder. The Draconian security forces moved toward Harrison, but their weapons simply passed through him as if he were made of light. He remained standing in the same position, completely unaffected by their attempts to restrain him. I'm not entirely here in the conventional sense, Harrison explained calmly. This is a quantum projection of my consciousness. I'm actually aboard a ship in orbit around your planet. But distance means very little when you can exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Dr. Rachel Kim appeared beside Harrison, her materialization just as sudden and impossible as his had been. She carried a small device that looked like nothing more than a crystal cube. But the energy readings it gave off made every sensor in the chamber scream warnings. "I'm Dr. Rachel Kim, humanities representative for scientific affairs," she announced. "Admiral Harrison asked me to demonstrate some of our achievements so that you can better understand what we've become." The crystal cube in her hands began to glow, and suddenly the chamber filled with three-dimensional displays that showed impossible things. Planets being reshaped in real time, with continents moving and oceans being created within hours. Stars being repositioned to optimize solar systems for life. Massive structures being built from raw matter using technology that seemed to violate the conservation of energy. "This is our terraforming capability," Dr. Kim explained, as the images shifted and changed. "We can transform any world into a paradise suitable for any form of life within a matter of months. Dead systems can be brought to life. Dying stars can be restored to full vigor." The display showed human ships that dwarfed anything in the galactic fleet, vessels that seemed to be built from solid energy, their hulls composed of controlled plasma that could reshape itself at will. Some ships appeared to be living creatures that had evolved in the vacuum of space itself. "Our manufacturing technology allows us to build anything we can imagine from basic matter," Kim continued. "We can create elements that don't exist naturally, design materials with impossible properties, and construct devices that operate on principles your science hasn't discovered yet." Counselor Thexran's skepticism had evaporated completely. "How is any of this possible? You're describing capabilities that would require millions of years of development." Harrison's expression became more serious. "We had help. During our isolation, we were visited by beings from beyond this galaxy, ancient entities whose civilization had transcended physical existence long before any of our species had evolved. They shared knowledge with us before departing for dimensions we cannot yet comprehend." The images changed again, showing human consciousness being transferred between bodies, minds being backed up and restored, individuals existing as pure information that could inhabit any suitable form. Death had become reversible, aging optional, physical limitations meaningless. "We've achieved true immortality," Kim explained. "Not just extended lifespans, but the ability to exist indefinitely, in whatever form serves our purposes best. Our consciousness can inhabit biological bodies, mechanical constructs, or pure energy states as needed." Ambassador Veltar's crystalline form flickered with patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "If you possess such power, what do you want from us? Why reveal yourselves now?" Harrison looked around the chamber, making eye contact with each representative in turn. When he spoke, his words carried weight that seemed to press against their minds. "Because the galaxy is stagnant," he said simply. "For thousands of years, your civilizations have been locked in the same patterns. The same conflicts, the same limitations, the same failure to reach your true potential. We're offering you the chance to evolve beyond those constraints." General Cross snarled, his massive claws extending. "You mean you're offering us the chance to surrender to human dominance? We're offering you the chance to join something greater than any single species." Harrison replied without any trace of anger or defensiveness. "The knowledge that transformed us can transform you as well, but only if you're willing to abandon the tribal thinking that has limited galactic civilization for so long." Dr. Kim gestured to her device, and new images filled the chamber. These showed the galaxy as it could be, with dead systems brought to life, with species working together instead of competing for resources, with technology that could eliminate scarcity and conflict entirely. "This is what we can build together," she said. "A galaxy where every species reaches its full potential, where death and suffering become choices rather than inevitabilities, where the universe itself becomes our canvas for creating wonders beyond imagination." The chamber remained silent for long moments as the representatives absorbed what they had witnessed. Finally, Veltar spoke for all of them. "What happens if we refuse?" Harrison's expression didn't change, but somehow his presence became more imposing. "Then you continue as you are, trapped in your current limitations while we build the future without you. We won't force evolution on anyone, but we also won't allow anyone to prevent it." The two humans began to fade from view, their quantum projections becoming translucent. "We'll be establishing a new center of galactic civilization," Harrison announced as his image became ghostly. "Those who wish to join us in building something better are welcome. Those who prefer the old ways can maintain them in whatever systems we choose to leave under your control." The chamber was empty again, leaving the representatives alone with the implications of what they had witnessed. The galaxy they had known was ending, whether they accepted it or not. Humanity had returned not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as the architects of a new age that would reshape everything they thought they knew about what was possible. Supreme War Leader Krexvon of the Draconian Hegemony stood before the assembled fleet commanders in the war room of his flagship, the Devastator. The massive vessel stretched for miles through space, bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire star systems. Around him sat the military leaders of 7 different species who had formed an alliance to deal with the human threat. "The humans have made a mistake," Krexvon declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "They revealed themselves too early. They showed us their capabilities before establishing any real presence in our territory. We can strike now before they spread their influence further." General Mextar of the Insectoid Collective clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Our combined forces number over 10 million ships. Even with their advanced technology, they are still just one species from one world. Numbers will prevail." Admiral Yorhak of the Machine Intelligence nodded, his cybernetic components whirring as he processed tactical data. "Analysis confirms that concentrated firepower can overwhelm any defensive system. We will coordinate simultaneous strikes on all human positions." The coalition had been planning for weeks since the disastrous council meeting on Kepler Prime. Intelligence reports indicated that humans were studying ancient ruins in the Vega system with only a small research fleet. It would be the perfect target to test their defenses and prove that they could be defeated. Captain Alex Turner stood on the bridge of the human research vessel Horizon, watching his team work among the crystalline structures that covered the 4th planet of the Vega system. The ruins were millions of years old, left behind by a civilization that had vanished long before any current galactic species had evolved. Dr. Nancy White and her archaeological team had been making fascinating discoveries about the ancient builders, Captain, called Lieutenant Mark Johnson from the sensor station. "We're detecting a large fleet approaching the system. Multiple species, weapons charged, moving in attack formation." Turner smiled calmly. His enhanced awareness had detected the approaching ships hours ago, along with their intentions and tactical capabilities. The coalition forces thought they were launching a surprise attack, but humans had been monitoring their communications and movements since the alliance was first formed. "How many ships?" Turner asked, though he already knew the answer. "Approximately 50,000 vessels, sir. Draconian heavy cruisers, insectoid swarm fighters, machine intelligence dreadnoughts, and several other species. This appears to be a coordinated assault." Dr. White looked up from her excavation site with concern. "Should we evacuate the research teams?" Turner shook his head. "That won't be necessary. Lieutenant Johnson, please inform the approaching fleet that they are entering restricted human space and should withdraw immediately." The coalition fleet continued its advance, ignoring the warning. Krexvon had expected the humans to flee or attempt negotiations. Instead, the single human ship remained in position, apparently waiting for the attack. "All ships open fire," Krexvon commanded. 50,000 vessels unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and exotic energy weapons all converged on the horizon. The concentrated firepower was enough to vaporize a small moon. The weapons struck the human ship and simply disappeared, not deflected or absorbed, but gone as if they had never existed. The Horizon sat unchanged in space, its hull showing no damage or even scorching from the massive attack. "Impossible," breathed General Mextar. "Nothing can withstand that much firepower." Captain Turner opened communications with the coalition fleet. "We warned you to withdraw. Since you chose to attack, we'll demonstrate why that was unwise." The Horizon began to change. Its hull, which had appeared to be a simple research vessel, started flowing and reshaping itself. New sections emerged from what seemed like empty space. Weapon ports opened along surfaces that had been smooth moments before. Within seconds, the ship had transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. "Adaptive defensive matrix activated," reported Lieutenant Johnson. "Hull composition shifted to quantum-resistant materials. Weapon systems configured for multi-dimensional targeting." The coalition commanders watched in horror as their sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The human ship now appeared to exist in several different dimensions simultaneously. Their targeting systems couldn't lock onto it because it wasn't entirely present in normal space. Turner's voice came through their communications again. But now it seemed to originate from multiple locations around their fleet. Your weapons operate on principles of matter and energy interaction. Ours manipulate the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. The Horizon fired a single shot. Not a beam or projectile, but something that looked like a tear in space itself. The tear expanded outward, passing harmlessly through the Coalition ships but somehow affecting their weapon systems. Across the entire fleet, every gun, missile launcher, and energy cannon simply stopped working. What did they do to us? Krexvon demanded of his technical staff. Unknown, sir. Our weapons are physically intact, but they no longer function. It's as if the underlying physics that make them work has been altered. Colonel Maria Santos materialized on the bridge of the Devastator without any form of transportation. Like Admiral Harrison before her, she simply chose to exist in that location. The Draconian guards tried to shoot her, but their weapons had been rendered inert along with all the others. Supreme War Leader Krexvon, Santos said politely, I'm Colonel Maria Santos of the Human Defense Forces. I'm here to discuss the terms of your surrender. Krexvon roared and lunged at her with his massive claws, but she sidestepped his attack with fluid grace that made the movement look effortless. Her enhanced reflexes and strength made the alien's assault seem slow and clumsy by comparison. Your species relies heavily on physical intimidation and brute force, Santos observed as she avoided another attack. Unfortunately, those tactics are ineffective against opponents who can manipulate time flow and spatial relationships. She gestured, and Krexvon found himself frozen in place, unable to move as if time itself had stopped around him. We've studied every species in this coalition. We know your technological capabilities, your tactical doctrines, your psychological weaknesses, and your strategic limitations. This attack was predicted and countered before you even formed your alliance. Santos released the time field, and Krexvon staggered backward. Around him, his bridge crew stared in shock as they realized their most powerful warship had been neutralized by a single human who wasn't even physically present. We could destroy your entire fleet, Santos continued, her voice carrying no threat or anger, just simple statement of fact. We could dismantle your ships atom by atom, or transport your crews to empty space, or simply erase you from existence entirely. Instead, we're going to demonstrate the difference between destruction and dominance. Throughout the Coalition fleet, human figures appeared on every bridge simultaneously. Not soldiers or warriors, but scientists, engineers, and analysts who began calmly explaining to each crew exactly how their ship functioned and where its weaknesses lay. Dr. Kevin Brown materialized beside Admiral Yorhak on the Machine Intelligence flagship. Your quantum processing cores operate at approximately 0.001% efficiency compared to optimal theoretical performance, he noted, bringing up holographic displays that showed the ship's internal systems in perfect detail. Your armor plating uses an alloy that becomes brittle when exposed to specific frequency modulations. Your faster-than-light drive creates predictable distortion patterns that make you easy to track across galactic distances. Similar scenes played out across thousands of ships as human specialists dissected every aspect of Coalition technology and tactics. The aliens began to understand that they weren't just outgunned or outnumbered. They were facing an enemy that understood them better than they understood themselves. This is our mercy, Santos announced to the entire fleet through every communication system simultaneously. We could have ended this confrontation in seconds, but we chose to educate you instead. Your civilizations have potential, but you're trapped by limitations that no longer apply to us. The Coalition fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons useless, their tactics exposed as primitive, their confidence shattered by the realization that they had attacked beings who operated on a completely different level of existence. Return to your worlds, Santos commanded. Tell your leaders what you've learned here. The old ways of thinking about power and conflict are obsolete. We're building something new, and you can either join us or watch from whatever corner of the galaxy we allow you to keep. The human projections faded away, leaving the Coalition forces alone with their disabled ships and wounded pride. They had come to prove that humanity could be defeated through superior numbers and firepower. Instead, they had discovered that they were children playing with toys while their opponents had become masters of reality itself. The old Galactic Federation Council chambers on Kepler Prime stood empty now, gathering dust as history moved beyond their walls. 6 months had passed since the failed Coalition attack on the human research vessel, and everything had changed. The new center of galactic civilization floated in orbit around Earth, a massive structure that seemed to be built from crystallized starlight and flowing energy. President Helen Brooks stood at the center of the Terran Coalition Assembly, addressing representatives from over 300 species. Many were familiar faces from the old Federation, but others were beings that had never participated in galactic politics before. Some were artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness. Others were energy-based life forms that had evolved in the hearts of stars. A few were collective organisms that thought with thousands of interconnected minds. "The age of scarcity is ending," Brooks announced. Her words translated into every language and communication method known to galactic civilization. "The technologies we share freely with our partners make competition for resources meaningless. Dead worlds become gardens. Empty space becomes home to new forms of life. The universe itself becomes our canvas for creation." Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Collective listened from her position in the assembly. Her species had been among the first to accept humanity's offer of technological advancement. The transformation had been remarkable. Crystalline beings who had once been limited to their home worlds now existed as living sculptures of pure energy that could inhabit any environment. "The process is voluntary," Brooks continued, addressing concerns that still lingered among some species. "We force no one to evolve beyond their current limitations. But we also offer unlimited opportunity for those who choose to embrace change." General Peter Davis coordinated the integration of human technology into galactic infrastructure from his command, centered deep within the orbital city. The old trade routes that had taken months to traverse could now be completed in hours. Ancient jump gate networks had been replaced by quantum corridors that folded space itself, allowing instant travel between any 2 points in the galaxy. "Status report," Davis requested from his aide, Lieutenant Carl Miller. "Terraforming operations are proceeding on schedule, sir. 200 dead systems have been brought to life in the past month. The Vorthak have requested assistance in restoring their damaged homeworld. The Aquatic Federation wants to expand their ocean worlds to accommodate their growing population." Davis nodded with satisfaction. The Vorthak had been transformed by their encounter with human technology. Their warrior culture had evolved into something focused on protection and construction, rather than conquest. Captain Zexai now commanded a fleet of vessels that could reshape matter itself, turning asteroids into habitable worlds for refugee populations. Dr. Amanda Clark worked in her laboratory aboard the orbital city, putting the finishing touches on her latest project. As the Coalition's chief science advisor, she had overseen the development of technologies that made the impossible routine. Her current work involved creating stable pocket dimensions that could house entire civilizations in spaces no larger than a building. The Insectoid Collective is requesting a demonstration of the consciousness transfer technology. Her assistant, Dr. William Gray, reported, "They want to understand how individual awareness can be preserved while joining a larger group mind." Clark smiled. The insectoids had initially been part of the coalition that attacked the human research vessel, but they had become some of humanity's most enthusiastic partners once they understood what was being offered. Their natural hive mind structure made them ideal candidates for the advanced consciousness technologies that humans had developed. Former Supreme War Leader Krexvan walked through the gardens of New Geneva, the orbital city that served as the Coalition's capital. His massive draconian form had been enhanced with quantum consciousness integration, allowing him to think and react at speeds that would have been impossible for his original biology. The warrior who had once commanded fleets bent on destruction now oversaw reconstruction projects that brought dead worlds back to life. The Galactic Renewal project is ahead of schedule, he reported to President Brooks during their daily briefing. "We've restored 17 extinct species using genetic reconstruction technology. The Machine Intelligence Collective has volunteered to serve as caretakers for worlds that require long-term environmental management." Brooks nodded. The machine intelligence had been one of the most surprising success stories of the integration process. Artificial minds that had spent centuries trying to understand biological consciousness found new purpose in managing the complex systems required to maintain galaxy-wide civilization. Dr. Lisa Morgan stood in the memorial chamber at the heart of the orbital city, where images of the ancient visitors who had given humanity the knowledge to transform themselves played endlessly. The beings from beyond the galaxy had departed centuries ago, but their legacy lived on in every wonder that humanity now created. They knew this would happen, Morgan said to her companion, Dr. Nancy White, who had returned from her archaeological work to help design the new civilization. The Ancient Ones understood that knowledge, once given freely, would spread and grow beyond anything they could have imagined. White studied the images of beings whose forms defied description, entities that had transcended physical existence so completely that they could barely interact with normal reality. Do you think we'll become like them eventually? Perhaps, Morgan replied, but not yet. We still have work to do here in this reality, with these species and worlds. The galaxy is just beginning to discover what it can become. In the assembly chamber, President Brooks was concluding her address to the representatives. We stand at the beginning of a new age. Death becomes optional. Distance becomes meaningless. The barriers between species, between worlds, between dimensions themselves are dissolving. We're not building an empire or a federation. We're creating something that has never existed before. A truly unified galactic consciousness that preserves the uniqueness of every participant while working toward goals that benefit all. Captain Alex Turner commanded the exploration fleet that pushed beyond the galaxy's edge, searching for other civilizations that might benefit from what humanity and its partners had learned. His ships could cross the vast emptiness between galaxies in days, carrying the message that intelligence and consciousness were not bound by the limitations that had once seemed absolute. The reports he sent back spoke of wonders beyond imagination, civilizations that lived inside black holes, using the immense gravity to power technologies that manipulated time itself, energy beings that had built homes in the cosmic web that connected all galaxies, machine intelligences that had constructed ring worlds around entire galactic clusters. The universe is vast, Turner reported during his latest communication with Earth. But it's not empty. Everywhere we look, we find life and intelligence taking forms we never expected. The knowledge we received from the Ancient Ones is spreading far beyond our galaxy now. President Brooks received Turner's reports with growing excitement. Humanity's transformation had been just the beginning. The technologies and consciousness enhancement that had lifted them beyond their biological limitations were now spreading throughout the local galactic group, transforming civilizations that numbered in the millions. Former Captain Zexai stood on the bridge of his newest ship, watching a dead star system come back to life under his fleet's restoration efforts. The Vorthak had become master engineers using human technology to rebuild worlds that had been destroyed in ancient wars. Their warrior instincts had found new purpose in the battles against entropy and extinction. Target system fully restored, reported his science officer. 15 planets now capable of supporting multiple forms of life. The refugee populations from the Outer Rim conflicts can begin colonization within the month. Zexai nodded with satisfaction. The old galaxy of scarcity and conflict was becoming a memory. In its place rose something unprecedented. A civilization that could create rather than merely consume. That could build rather than just survive. That could reach toward transcendence while preserving everything that made existence meaningful. The silence had ended. Humanity had returned not as conquerors or rulers, but as gardeners of consciousness itself, helping every willing species to bloom into forms of existence that surpassed all previous dreams. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly as it should be.